Is computer programming fun? Or should I learn programming? It is fun. It is really fun. It is a form of tool making, and sometimes it's hard to stop. In a way, it is somewhat similar to board games, where you have to take time to look at the rules before you sit down and play. But that's not always true. A couple of times I felt the need to be able to put a thing on the monitor. One time on a Commodore 64 ages ago, it was a pixel and then a line. And later on a Windows 95 machine, I wanted an empty window because what the heck? Then followed by creation of a Rolodex program. I just thought it would be really neat. The empty window or Rolodex, which was written in VisualBasic, took me to programming web pages in ASP, which also relied on VisualBasic. Web pages use HTML, a kind of a description language, but it can be scripted with other languages. And I was practicing ASP by programming a clone of this cute email sending program called FormMail. It had some huge bugs, but never mind that, it was awesome. FormMail was written in Perl, a language that I never used before that time. I was just scanning the code for ideas. So I was somewhat learning from the code. And the more time I spent with Perl, the more I learned about it. And then I was like, what the heck? I don't need VisualBasic anymore. But a lot of people were scared of it. They didn't even want to try it. They wanted Ruby and Python because it seemed like an easier language. Python is still popular, by the way, but I loved Perl too much to even look at Python. I later switched to PHP and programmed the heck out of it, and then went back to Perl and switched to PHP again. It was really cool. The idea of using one language on the server and another one in the web browser was really odd, though. I just couldn't bring myself to program two separate things and then get them to talk without actually reusing code, just writing both sides in a different language. It was just too weird. Now I just program in modern JavaScript. When I switch from browser to server or web server programming and then command line programming, I hardly even think about it. Barely notice it. It all just flows together. There are some areas that create hard to read code, no matter what language it is. And I think my next programming language will be something I will create. It will be a drag and drop language similar to Blender's geometry nodes. It's called a visual programming language. I will write it in JavaScript. It will just basically generate more JavaScript code based on the graphics I drag together. I started programming when I was about 10, maybe 9, and I have never regretted it. I've never gotten stuck. It was never, ever unpleasant. Quite to the contrary. It has always been fun, and for many years I would write little programs on holidays like Christmas or New Year's. It is just that fun. It helps you make a nice day even nicer. On the other side of fun, you discover usefulness. There's just nothing that you can't do or automate, or go cheerfully nuts with. For example, when you are bored, you can write a little program to convert a tiny photo to an audio file that will speak a color at every pixel. Then you get some M&Ms, sort them in jars, put your headphones on and copy that photo by precisely arranging rows of colored candy. See, it's really cool. But when you need something, especially for yourself, it then becomes a masterpiece, massively overprogrammed, multiple code generators purring along, and new lessons everywhere. Not so long ago, I've noticed that a program used for transpiling or compiling or optimizing files popped up with these two beautiful functions, parallel and serious. This afternoon, I started testing a new code generator. I'm trying to see how fast I can get my website to generate on an inexpensive Raspberry Pi computer. Parallel processing has been around forever, but it really shines when transforming files in a language as pleasant to look at as JavaScript. These two functions, so simply named, can be nested together to create nested workflows that execute some things in a sequence and others all at once. When you are resizing images, you can resize them all in parallel. But when you are compressing and later publishing a website, you use the serious function. This way you finish compressing before you start publishing. Anytime you sit down to something new, there's always something neat waiting for you. In closing, if you care to try programming, you should know that there are games where you can program your character to move. One such game that I just came across this afternoon is Warrior.js, where you have to call the method walk that belongs to the warrior object. You actually have to type in warrior.walk with round brackets. The round brackets mean that you are executing the walk function that belongs to your warrior. This whole thing is executed in an object called player and a method called playTurn, which means you will keep walking each time it is your turn to do something. This is really cool. In the second level, it gets a little bit more interesting, let me tell you that. The world of programming is as big of an adventure as you can imagine it to be.